And with the status and settings icon, you can provide some additional feedback of how you're feeling, if you're still confused, whether you agree or disagree with something. So that's just another good way of kind of asking students for some quick initial feedback, just if they have any other questions and things like that as well. So really in terms of moderating these presentations, one nice thing to do is actually to ask students to mute their microphones right from the start. Main thing with that is that you won't get that background noise that comes into play sometimes if they are home and their dog starts barking, or they're looking through their books or papers and things like that, and you get that interference noise. If they're all muted, that won't happen and the audio will be a lot clearer. And that's also another good way of having that hand raise option that's down there, is that you could always ask a question, tell them to raise their hands, and then you could individually call on the students, have them unmute their microphones so they could talk to the group. And then it kind of manages it a little bit better there in terms of everyone being able to hear what the main person is speaking there. So those are kind of those four main buttons down at the bottom that everyone has. From this point on, I'm going to actually share the screen of a different session that I have open so that we're able to see all the functionality that you as a moderator, as an instructor, would have when they are working in Collaborate. So give me one second to share this other screen. All right, and so everyone should be able to see, I have another Collaborate room open. Once again, I have those four main buttons at the bottom. Of course, if I wanted to activate my audio, my webcam, that raise hand and that additional feedback. But up in the upper left-hand corner, there is a session menu button. And when you do that, you'll get another menu. And if you wanted to record your session, which I am doing for our main session right here, all you'd have to do is click on this Start Recording button, and a little prompt will come up that says the session is being recorded. At the end of this presentation, we'll get into how you actually would just with your students. But right now, it's recording in the background so that if there are any students that are not able to join the session in real time, you are able to share out the link so they will be able to watch it at a different time. Also under this session menu, there's an option here to use your phone for audio. So if your computer audio is not working, or there's problems with microphones or any other technical issues, you can dial in with this number. I believe this is unique to all students, so you would have to mention to them to actually click on this session menu and get the dial in. They would also see this when they do join the session, so there's a couple different ways with it as well. So really the last thing with this session menu, there is a tutorial here that will guide you through some of these different menu options here, but also at the bottom, when you are done, the Leave Session button is here as well. You could also close your tabs, but this is the one way to leave it here as well. And of course, you could stop the recording if you do not want certain parts of your Collaborate session to be recorded. So then from there, if we go all the way across to the other bottom part of the screen here, there's the Collaborate panel. And this is kind of where most of what we'll be talking about will happen here today. So with this panel, there's four main tabs here. So the first one is a chat. And in this chat window, you can type chat messages to everyone. Since Tim is also in this session here, I can start typing his name. Now, any messages that I type will only go to Tim's account. So he'll be the only one that sees this. So this is one way to kind of have some chats on the side. You could also have everyone type their messages so that everyone could see them. And this way, if there are questions for the class, or you want students to ask questions as you're talking, you'll be able to have this side panel open as you're talking. You'll be able to see some of the messages as they come in, and you'll be able to answer questions that way as well. So as I mentioned before, you could have them raise their hand and unmute their microphone to talk, or the other way is you could have them asking questions throughout. Yeah, so Tim used this function here to raise his hand, so I'll get a prompt for that. And that really kind of takes us to this next tab that's down here, which is the attendees. And with the attendees, you're going to be able to see everyone that is currently on the Collaborate Ultra session. And for some of these prompts, you're able to see that Tim has raised his hand. If Tim would actually go down to where the My Status are, and if I say, Tim, do you agree with this statement? He could change his status, so that's the feedback is that he agrees. So, of course, when you have the whole list of students here, you'll be able to see mixed reactions and all that stuff as well. But one way to kind of track participants, quick way of asking for some feedback on how they're feeling about a certain topic or question is a nice way to track it right here. One other thing that I will mention about the attendees tab area is that sometimes you want to bounce back and forth between these attendees and maybe this chat window. So what you could actually do is, and that's why they have these two little lines down here, is you could actually drag this panel, and now you'll be able to see all the attendees, you'll be able to see the screen that's being shared, and you'll be able to track the chat messages here as well. So this is the only panel that allows you to kind of drag it with along with it, but it's also a nice way of kind of being able to see the different areas of the Collaborate room. And really, if you just want to stop seeing this attendees thing, you just have to drag it back over to that side menu, and it collapses back there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this. I see that in our room, Andrea has a question. Or are you just practicing raising your hand there? Oh, okay. No question there, but yeah, if you want to click around with some of these options here, I'll do that. If you do have any questions as well, you could type it in that chat window. Both Tim and I will be monitoring that throughout here. And I can see someone's typing. So I'll give you a couple minutes if you have questions for this. You could ask now. Either raise your hand or type it in the chat box. And we could answer any questions for anything that we've covered up to this point. And then we'll get into actually sharing some of the contents and files and screens. Andrea asked, can the student record the session without your approval? And the answer to that is no, because only moderators have access to that session menu. So you're the only one that will actually be able to start the recording. Yes, Emily, you have a question? Yeah, so Emily, do you have a question or practicing just using some of those status icons down there? All right, so one thing you could do is you could always type it in the chat message as well. And what we'll do is we'll actually go ahead here and really kind of get into that next main panel, main tab that's down there in the Collaborate panel of sharing content. And this is where you'll do a lot of your course management here. So one thing that I will do is I'll share that screen again. So you will be able to see, once again, we're in that other test sample Collaborate session. And the next tab is this little box icon with the arrow, and that's to share content. And there's a few different ways that you could actually share your screen, any applications that you have open on your computer, as well as files. So really the first on this menu is a blank whiteboard. And with this blank whiteboard, what I'll actually do is I will activate it in our main session here so that everyone could see. Really a blank whiteboard where you have some annotation tools at the top where anyone could write on the board, draw the shapes, type the text. If you do have a laptop with a touch screen and a stylus, you are able to write quite a bit better than just using the mouse. So that's one thing to also consider. Also, these Collaborate Ultra is mobile friendly. So if you are joining on an iPad or tablet, you'll also have some of this touchscreen control for using a whiteboard like this. We'll get into settings where you can disable students from actually writing on this whiteboard, but if you do not change that setting by default, everyone has access to these annotation tools at the top of the screen. Yep, so you can click around a second here if you want to just try it out a second, and then we'll move on here. Yeah, and Kieran asked the question if I could show you where to disable this. And yeah, we'll get to that. That's in that last tab that's down there for the settings. So yeah, we'll get to that just in a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing this whiteboard, but you will have time to use those annotation tools in a little bit again. I'm gonna go back to my other screen, and the next thing on the list is to share an application or a screen. So if you do have a specific software that you want to show off, if you do have a website that you show, you'd be able to do this under the share application and screen. So kind of a little effect going on right here with sharing this right now, but I can select an application. So if I do have a Word document, for an example, that I want to share with the class, I have Word open and I pull that file up. So what I'll do is I'll just select Word. And now that Word document is what's going to be shown on the screen. And they would see anything that I'm doing in real time as well in it. So it's really kind of sharing that whole application window as a whole. And I'll click that stop sharing icon. That's how you stop sharing anything that's up there. And I'll go back to the share application and screen. And one thing that I will recommend is to use Collaborate Ultra using Chrome on your computer. One of the main things is that it works a little bit better in terms of sharing some of your web page windows that are up here. So you get this Chrome tab option. So if I did want to select another tab that I have open in Chrome, I can click and I could actually share that. And now you'll be seeing the whole website for this. So if there is any websites or anything that you want to talk through and share and talk through together, you'll be able to share those tabs with it. We've had some people here in the office come through asking about things like Kahoots and things like that. You could always share that link within the chat window. Students can pull it up. You could then go through the results as well just by sharing the tab that you have open on your screen. So some of these other things, even like collaborative documents like Google Docs and things like that, you could pull it up, share the link with the class, and then you'll all be working on it together here as well. For screens, there's a stop button at the top, which I can click, and that will take me back to the Collaborate room. And so under Share Application and Screen, one of the last sharing content options is to share a file. So what I can do is click on this, and from here I could drag or select this to upload an image, a PowerPoint, PDF files to share on the screen. One question came in here from Mary Beth of, can you actually make changes in applications using the share function? My IT lab, I believe that you can. If you have the application up on the screen, what it basically does is that it opens up that application window. That's something, if it is a really specific type of software, you might want to test it out beforehand, and we'll get into some options on doing that right at the end here. But it will pull up the computer applications that you have up. So basic ones I've used without any problems, but if more specific ones, I'd test it out just to make sure ahead of time that you're able to share those more advanced applications there. So Ken asked the question of, can you preload files before the session begins? Let's see. Okay. So yeah, that's one thing that we could do here is that this is actually a presentation that I uploaded ahead of time. You could do this right when you open up the Collaborate session. You could upload your files. Students won't actually be able to see these until you click the share button. So you could always prep some of the files beforehand, and then once it's time to actually share them with the students, you can come to the share section. They'll already be preloaded, and then what you would do is you would select the file, you click share now, and at least for our presentations, the slides will come up on the right-hand side. Students won't see this yet until you actually click on the slide itself, and then you'll be able to navigate using these arrows at the bottom or this right panel to select which file you want to share. And I'll put one in our class session here as well really quick, because also you do get all these annotation sections here as well. So let me actually put this file up here. You could start typing questions here as I load this file, just so you can see from your student point of view on how sharing a PowerPoint would look in this class session. And this is one that I should have preloaded beforehand, but we'll let it upload. It converts it. Depending on your file size, sometimes it's really quick. Other times it won't take too long, but it'll just convert it into a Collaborate Ultra kind of view so that it will display it in the class here. Yeah, so as that's converting, let me check the chat. I think a couple questions came in here. So Ashton asked if it is best for students to use Chrome with Collaborate Ultra, or does it not matter what browser they use? I would still recommend Chrome if they are using a computer. One thing with Ultra on mobile devices is that sometimes it works best on the native web browser for whichever device they're working on. So any Android devices probably be best to use Chrome on their mobile device. If they are using an Apple device, launching this in Safari would work best for that. Let me check this file here, see if it uploaded. Yep. So what I'll do is I'll select the file just like I did there. I share now. And I'm just going to launch this first screen here. So one thing that you'll notice is at the top, you once again get those annotation tools. So I know some instructors have in the past put some slides together with some problems, from some fill in the blanks, some questions up there. And then we're able to kind of fill them in with the class's help as they go through. So some additional planning ahead of time there for doing that, but one thing of actually kind of pre-planning some slides to have some of these interactive moments using some of these tools here is possible with it. So, so yeah. And like, as I mentioned, PDF files, image files, you can load up here, PowerPoint files as well is a nice, easy way to really kind of build out those slides ahead of time with any images and things like that, and content that you want to share with everyone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my slides here. Ask any other questions here right now. So Ken asked if I could only share one thing at a time. Yes. So you can share one thing at a time. And actually, let me launch this slides once again. And I'll actually open up my webcam as well. So you'll see that it is in the lower right-hand corner. I believe you are able to click on my webcam if you want that to be the main focus of what you're watching. But but I would probably recommend just keeping it on the slides at this point, and then you'll be able to see that. So you're kind of able to kind of toggle back and forth between what you want that main area of focus to be. However, if you do preload that different content, you can pretty easily go back to that share files area, select that other file that you've uploaded, and share that and kind of bounce back and forth between those two things. So one thing at a time will be up on the screen. However, if you upload multiple files, anything that you upload will remain in that share files area, and you'll be able to kind of toggle back and forth between whatever you want to share. So I'll stop sharing that. And we'll actually go back to that other course room here, just for the last few options that are available here under the share content area. And it's things, two other main things. There's polling, and with polling you can ask simple multiple choice or yes or no questions. The one unfortunate problem here is that you cannot preload questions, so overall it'd probably have to be pretty basic in terms of types of questions, but what we could do is we'll try that. We'll see how it looks here in a second. I'll start a poll in our class session. I'll just do a little sample poll. It's just do you agree? And you'll be able to mark your answer yes or no. Up at the top, you're able to see whether there has been no responses yet or who has not responded. So I see that there's 5 no responses right now, 9 yeses, 1 no. And really from there, you're kind of able to see really quick. So the unfortunate thing, though, is that you're not able to preload these questions. However, if you do have a slide where you have a main larger question posted there, and then you launch a poll, and it could even be a multiple choice one with like responses on the slide for A, B, C, D, and you want them to select which one, you could do that pretty easily there as well. All right, so Karen said that we cannot see the poll, just the moderator. Let's see, so that yes or no question, are you able to see that at the bottom, or can you not see the responses? Oh, okay, yeah, but not the results, yeah. So yeah, you could, one thing that I can do, I believe I showed the responses right now. Are you able to see that? Are you able to see the results now? Okay. Yeah, and I'll show that right under the poll. There's the answers. There's an option to show responses. And then from there, everyone's able to see it. So it can kind of be closed door until you actually let those responses open to all the class. And one thing is, let me go back and I'll show you just so you can see how that looks on my screen here. So if I would start this yes or no poll, what I do is accept the question here, the answers, the question here, the answers down below, and I click start. It will show up. And then right below this, so right now it's only available, the responses are only available to the moderator. If I click show responses, that's how everyone was able to see it there. Then I can clear it. Really, anytime you want to stop sharing anything, you'll have this stop icon. So if I am sharing my screen, if I am sharing a whiteboard or a file, usually up in the upper left up here, there will be the stop icon, and that takes it away off the screen. One last thing to go through in this share content area is the breakout rooms. And this is a nice little feature in that you could have students break up and talk in small groups before returning to the larger overall class room as a whole. And it's a nice, easy thing to do as well, because all you have to do is you'll see your list of students and you could just drag them into any group that you want to do here. And as an instructor, I'm going to start these breakout groups. And you'll see that it's starting up here. As the instructor, you'll have these options, these little, almost like a door icon here, where you can click and join any of these groups. So you can kind of go in, see how they're doing, see what they're talking about, and then you could leave and join another group. So you're able to kind of, like you would walking around a room in an in-person session, just to see what they're kind of talking about and discussing, and see if they have any questions. You can jump into these mini breakout rooms as well, just to see what they're talking about. And just like with everything else, when you're done working in these breakout rooms, there is this stop icon up here. And when I do that, everyone returns back to the main course room to talk as a group. Ken asked if groups can raise their hands and call you over. Let's actually try this one more time here. Let's put Tim in room 1. Tim, are you able to? Yeah, so you're able to see if, just like before, the student list will come up, and you'll be able to see if students are raising their hands or have different statuses there. So good question there. So I'll stop sharing this one here. So can you save groups across sessions? Was another question Ken came up with. I don't believe you can. Usually it's just going into the shared content area and starting these breakout groups. Let's see, not allowing. I'd have to see in terms of this area here of custom or assigning groups, what other functionality is there with that. So that's one look out for. We'll post it to any Collaborate resources that we're getting together for all the training we're doing next week, and I'll add that to the list for the great breakout rooms just to see what some of these custom assignments could be and if they could be saved along the way there. All right, and then one last thing here in the panel is the My Settings tab here. This is where you can go. If you do need to reset up your camera or microphone, you could do so in this section right here. If you find that you're coming through very loud or you're hearing things very loud, you could change some of your speaker volume here as well. Notification settings is something that you'll notice that when hands are raised and things like that, that there's different pop-up notifications. This is where you can turn off either the audio notifications or the pop-up notifications as a whole. So if you're finding that you're getting a lot of hand raises and a lot of chats and you're hearing that little beep noise every time a chat message comes through and it's annoying you, which it would over time if it is a really chatty room, you could deactivate that and then you won't hear that notification anymore. The question was brought up before in terms of turning off those annotation tools. That is under session settings. By default, participants can share their audio, share their video, post chat messages, or draw on the whiteboard or files. But if you do not want them to have those annotation controls, you could just deselect that option and then it won't come up anymore if you are using a whiteboard or sharing a file. So really that's some of the main options here for this Collaborate panel. I'll open the room up to any questions that you might have right now. And what we'll do is we'll go into how to set up a session in Collaborate Ultra and also then how to share a recording. So I'll just pause here for a minute or two here just to see if any questions come in up until this point, and then we'll get to that other information, and then that will pretty much be it unless you have any other questions. Yes. A good point here for Karen mentioned is, can you show how to change participants into presenters so that students can load and give PowerPoint files? That is an excellent question that I overlooked, and I had it in my notes right here. So one thing that I'll do is I'll bounce back into that other session here. Yeah, and also Ashton asked if the recording will be available for anyone that joined. Yes, we'll make this all available here as well. So let me share my screen here. And so in terms of giving students some additional control, by default, they'll usually join your room as a participant, which they won't get those options. They'll have the same options that you have right now if you would open up this Collaborate panel. However, you can change that. So right now, Tim is a participant. However, if I go over to the right-hand side of his name, there's this little circle icon here for attendee controls. And if I click on that, I have some different options here. His microphone is not on right now, but if it was, I would have an option to mute. So if you do have those students that, even though you ask over and over to mute their microphones and they don't do it, you can kind of take things into your own hands and come up here and click the mute button, and then you won't get that interference there. You can chat. An easy, quick way to send a chat message to a student as well is that you'll see that the chat will only go to Tim. And then there's the options here of making them a moderator or presenter. There's not too much difference in here. The moderator will have some additional controls here in terms of the attendee controls. But if I make Tim a presenter, he would be able to share a file, share a PowerPoint, things like that as well. So really it's under these attendees control where you're then able to give students some additional control above the presenter or the participant level, which is a little bit more limited. So yeah, this is where you would go to do it. It would be the attendees list, attendees control, and then you have these options here as well. So Karen asked the question of, can we allow people into our sessions who are not students in our class? For an example, a librarian, and the answer there is yes. And we'll get to that very shortly here in terms of how to set up a session. Because when you set up a session, you're actually able to get a web link for your Collaborate session, which you're able to email out to students and anyone else that you would want to join the session. So they don't always necessarily have to go through Blackboard to get into the room. If you create a session, you'll be able to get a link to share with all your students. So you can post it in Blackboard, you could send it out through an email, you could post it as an announcement in your class, all that stuff for really the best way of getting students to the room. Yeah, she mentioned that it works more like Zoom. I think a lot of these web platforms now are, especially after they went all browser-based, since you didn't have to install any application for joining this session, a lot of them have a lot of that similar functionality here. And so one thing that I'll do is now I'll go into a Blackboard section here. I'll show you how to create a session and then also how to share a recording through that as well. So I'm going to share my screen again. And so I am in my course section. So the nice thing is that IT has pushed out the Collaborate Ultra link to all course menus. So there's nothing that you have to do in your course sections to get the tool here. It should be there when you go visit your Blackboard course section. You should be able to see a Collaborate link here so that both you and your students can go directly there to access it. But after I do click on Collaborate Ultra, you are taken to this main room. And two things to point out is that one, there is a course room and it is unlocked and available for anyone at any time. So if you do want to tell students that they can come if they want to talk about something or meet about something, or if you want to have open office hours at a certain time, you could say that you'll be in the course room from 6 to 7, and anyone could come in, click on the Collaborate Ultra link, click on the course room, and you'll all be launched into this unlocked, open anytime, available all the time course room. However, if you do want to, and it's a good thing, especially if you're going to record it, set up specific sessions for certain classes on a certain day and a certain time. What you would do is you would click on this Create Session button, and you would type in a session name. Under Event Details, you could set up the start day and the start time, as well as the end day and the end time, or you can say there's no end to it and then it's just an open session. That's pretty much the type of room that we're in right now. It's just a no end open session. You could also then select how early you want students to be able to access the room. So it's nice to provide about 15 minutes so they can come in, make sure their audio is working, their webcams are working, more so get some of that technology out of the way. If they find the audio is not working, gives them time to then get that dial-in phone number and things like that as well. So right up here, after I typed in the name, it came up with an anonymous dial-in number for joining by phone. But there's also this guest link down here. And so this is the link that you can copy. Anyone who joins will be a participant, just like you are in the class right now. So this is the link that you could send out to students. If there is a librarian you want to jump in on the class session, anyone else, even a guest speaker, this is the link that you can copy and send out, and then they would be able to join without having to log in the Blackboard and all that stuff as well. It would launch the Collaborate room right in their browser with it. So this is where you would go to set that up. So really right when everything is set up here, there it is. There's a save button down at the bottom. And actually one thing I want to point out too is that there is also a session settings icon here as well, or menu option here as well. One thing that we would recommend that's not a default option is to make a check mark next to this allow recording downloads. What this will do is that it will allow you to download your recording as a video file. So you would be able to save it on your computer. If you did want to upload it to like Yuja or YouTube as a restricted file or something like that as well for backup, this would allow you to download this as an MP4 video file. And then it's also here as well, you get those participant options. So if you know right from the start you don't want those annotation tools for students, you could deselect it right here. Then once it's really all set up, you just click save, and then that session is in your Blackboard Ultra room. And then really from there, after creating sessions, and this is one that's a little bit hidden, you have this whole sessions banner right here, but there is an additional menu right here. And that's where you can toggle between your sessions and your recordings. So for the foundations class, this is where I had a recording from the previous week. And if you go over to the right, once again, you get these this little circle icon here. And these are the recording options, where with this, I can copy a link. And so if you want to send out a recording of the session to your students, you can copy the link and you could email that out as well. So if students want to review the session that we had yesterday, or if you weren't able to make it, here's the recording of the Collaborate session that we had. Since I did activate that allow downloads, I have this download option right here, and that would download it to my computer. If I really don't like it at all, I could delete it. If I wanted just to edit the name for some clarification, I could edit the name so that instead of recording one, make it a little more descriptive as well. That could help you if you are having multiple sessions a week. That could also help kind of label these sessions a little bit better as well. So Karen also asked if there's a way of running auto caption. Unfortunately, Ultra does not have an auto caption option with it. So that would have to be something that's done a little bit more at the end in terms of a caption source with it. The other thing, the way of doing caption though, is to actually allow downloads. Then you would get the video file. You could upload it to a different video system, such as YouTube, which would have some auto captioning on it, where you'd have to go and edit the file a little bit to make it a bit more accurate and compliant. But that's one way to actually do it. And with YouTube, you can make it a restricted private video, so that the only way students or anyone would be able to see it would be if you would share the direct link with them. So people wouldn't be able to just search on YouTube. If it was marked private, it wouldn't come up in any search results. It would only be if you would share the link or embed the video somewhere where people would be able to watch it. So Andrea asked, what was the guest option with the check mark next to it when I was setting up a session? Let me take a look here and see. If I were to edit this. Oh, guest access. Yeah, so really with guest access, if you deselect that, they would have to come in through Blackboard. But with guest access, then you'd be able to get that link to share out to other people to join, or to make it easier for students to join as well to get that link there. So how to embed the video into a Blackboard announcement, specifically which type of media file should I use? So do you mean the Collaborate session itself? Because one thing that you can do for sharing recordings, okay, yeah, so recording, what you could actually do is you wouldn't necessarily have to download the file. What you would just have to do is click on these recording options, go down to copy link, and just, whoops, I do not want to delete it. Go down to copy link, which is copied, and then I can go into an announcement. Basically, that link is now copied into the clipboard on the computer. If I were to create an announcement, I could just copy and paste it right into an announcement. Doing it this way, what will happen is that the recording will launch in pretty much a Collaborate player. And that's how students would watch it on their devices. So basically, it just plays that Collaborate file in the Collaborate type of window itself. So how did you add the Collaborate Ultra link to the content area? Let's see here. Yeah, so one thing is that IT added the link into all course sections. So the next time you go into your course section on Blackboard, a Collaborate Ultra link should be there. I think they were still unsure where it would appear on the menu. We asked for it to be higher up, so you would see it. But when you go into your course sections, IT pushed it out to all sections. So you should have this link here, which would then take you to this sessions window. All right, good. And Mary Beth mentioned that it is in there now and it is visible. So let's see, Ashton asked if, let me see here, can you also allow outside people to access the course room? So let's see, in terms of the course room, you would have to probably, actually there is. So in the course room, you can copy this guest link. The way I did that is that on the course room, all the way over to the right-hand side for session options, there is that guest link option that you could also copy and paste to others as well. So good question there. I've never tried that out before. So Andrea asked, when you share the whiteboard or an application or a Chrome tab, do you as the moderator still have access to everything on your computer? But are you making only one thing viewable for students at a time? So yeah, so basically what you share is the only thing students see. So you can kind of toggle in between those different options. You can have, say, a Word document open on your computer and have it ready there under that share contents and then share application. And then once you share it, then students will only see that. One thing that you can do overall is you can share your entire desktop, and I'll show you how that looks here right now. Let me stop sharing my screen. I'm going to share my entire screen. And it'll be a little messy. And actually, since I have the Collaborate window open, it makes that little psychedelic effect. But if I were to tag through different options, you should be able to see on my desktop. One thing I would recommend is probably not having your mail open, kind of cleaning up your desktop a little bit beforehand so it's not too busy and causing distractions, or if an email notification did come up, might not want students to necessarily see all those email pop-up notifications. So just some things there. And actually on our knowledge base, the thing I have open right now, and it was also in Jen Kelly's email out before, and also our Learning Technologies email that came out this morning. There is a link for some best practices for hosting some of these webinars in Ultra, really to become available with the environments. Also some tips like that of muting microphones, making sure your email's closed if you are sharing your screen, different things like that as well. So that's one read. If you go to our knowledge base on the Learning Tech site, which you hopefully would have some links there, or if you go to codlearningtech.org, there's a knowledge base article up there, or a knowledge base link up there where you could search for Ultra, and that resource will come up just for some ideas, some things to be mindful of. One thing I would recommend now to everyone, if you are interested in using this, since that link is on your course sites, since that course room is open in all of your course sessions, just go in, click around. This is a web-based program. You're not going to break anything. You're not going to shut anything down. So really take some time now just to click through some of these options of the whiteboard, test out sharing some files, what the options are under the share application and sharing your screen. Just try it out. Low stakes. You'll probably be the only one in those open course rooms. So yeah, just try it out, see how it works. It's the first tip on that best practices guide there, is just become available or comfortable in the course room, just so you're a bit more familiar with the tools, so that you can kind of plan this out a little bit more, and yeah, just see what you can do with it. So stick around here for any other questions. That's all of the tutorial I have here, but we're going to have sessions all next week as well. The calendar went out with that. So there's going to be multiple sessions on Collaborate Ultra next week, in person and online, as well as some other things. If you are interested in discussions, I'm going to have a few presentations on creating some discussion forums, some things to be mindful of in terms of hosting some effective discussions and managing communications there on Blackboard. So we're all on deck here next week, pretty much all day, every day next week in terms of presentations and topics for getting some of this set here. Okay, and Karen mentioned here too that the App Store offers Blackboard Collaborate app, but that's probably the old version. So if they use the Blackboard app, um, then they'll be able to have Collaborate Ultra. So there was Collaborate in course sections, and that's actually the old tool, which is now completely deactivated. Collaborate Ultra is the new version, which is web-based, mobile-friendly, all that stuff. So um, as Kieran mentioned, yeah, if they have the Blackboard app, they'll be able to use this Ultra version on their phones and tablets. And yeah, it's the Pencil app. There's actually an instructor app, which is kind of like a tab notebook for instructors. And then there's the Pencil app with the app or pencil icon for students. Yeah, so I'll stick around here a couple minutes here. Just any other questions? And I'm about to do this in an in-person session here in about 10 minutes as well. So yeah, and another thing Karen mentioned here in terms of presenting from a laptop or desktop to share files, as you, the instructor, I would definitely recommend, unless you're just having kind of a round table discussion, just want to talk with your students, but if you do want to actually present files and things like that, definitely use a desktop computer. It gives you a lot more functionality, and I would recommend using Chrome on your desktop computers, just since it has some additional functionality there in terms of sharing tabs in the applications. Yeah, and Kent, do you have a question? You could unmute your microphone if you're able to here.
Kent actually asked earlier if we should use our microphones.
Oh, okay. Yeah, overall the recommendations is to mute your microphones if you're not going to be talking. Um, Mainly because then there won't be that background noise and things like that. Since sometimes in web conference platforms, what will happen is that if there is paper rustling in the background or dogs barking or doors opening and closing, that will kind of take over the audio for the rest of the room, and it kind of gets hard to kind of hear the main person talking. So would recommend muting all microphones unless it's you're kind of called on to talk. So that's where it's kind of nice in terms of managing some of these sessions of muting your microphone. If you have a question, raise your hands, and then from there I could call on students to talk. So I believe you should be able to, if you click that microphone down at the bottom, it should become active for you. I am actually able to mute them if I did want to turn them off, but you would be able to click that microphone icon at the bottom center of the screen to turn it back on. And I can see that there is a microphone icon next to your name up there. So yeah, I see that it's active. You might want to try clicking on that My Settings in the Collaborate panel, that gear icon. Just if you click on that Setup Camera and Microphone option again, see if that will activate it. Depending on your browser for the first time, you'll notice that you'll get a little prompt asking if you want to make your webcam and microphone available. And so you would just have to click Allow, and then it would be available in this program here. And thanks, Karen. Saying good luck to all of us in learning technologies. It's been a interesting few days here, so with more to come. So thanks for that. so Kent's still trying the microphone. Yeah, and that's one thing. I see the microphone icon there. In terms of the attendee controls, I'm able to mute, but I'm not able to turn microphones or webcams on. So, okay, in terms of simulating the classroom, yeah, that's one thing, and that's the one nice thing with attendee controls, though, is that if it does get a little out of hand, you do have the option to mute, but not unmute. So, yeah, that would just be one thing to test out. You can go into a course room just to see how your microphone is working there and everything. You can go into the test room. You could test it out there just to see whether once it reconnects and things like that, if that will kind of kick it into gear. I think one thing too, just with this too, is that once you have a room open and you notice that you do have audio issues and things like that, you could actually leave the room and rejoin. Since your students will be in the room already, they'll be left in the room kind of on their own until you reconnect. So if there's other people in the room during a session and the time, as long as it's during that scheduled time, if you leave the room, everyone will still be there. You're not going to knock everybody out. You could actually go out and come back in, and then you'll be able to do that. So Robert's asking if all faculty have computers at home with mics and cameras, and that if a lot of faculty have basically desktop computers from the college, which will probably stay here. Yeah, that's one thing to kind of ask around about. I know that we had a few webcams and headsets here, but I think those have all, for the most part, been checked out. We didn't have that many to begin with. I'm not sure if the library has some or not, or if they're saving those for students. I'm not sure the status of that, but you could always ask that. You could always ask your division too in terms of purchasing them as well. Would be a nice thing to have, especially a headset. A lot of them are USB now, so you'll have the headphones and the microphone built onto it, so you can kind of hear and talk a little bit better with it. So yeah, if that's it, really, as I mentioned, go into your course rooms, play around a bit with this, contact us with any questions, and we'll get back to you with some replies here. And yeah, have a play with it and see how it goes. So yeah, thanks for all this. Thanks for those additional questions you provided here. There were some good ones there along the way that I'll add to the list of things to cover in future sessions here. So thanks for joining, and let us know if you have any questions.